I'm Erica Garner. I just finished reading After Dark. And this book drew me in very quickly, which I was kind of shocked by because the book that we read last week really didn't. It took me a few chapters to kind of even get into it a little bit, and even still, it just wasn't my favorite. But this book, I was halfway through chapter 1 and I was already hooked. And I think that mostly had to do with Murakami's writing style. He's very descriptive, and the way he tells about a scene, it's not just the interactions of the characters in the scene and the interactions of the characters with the rest of the scene. It's all about the things around them too, and he really goes in depth to explain the way that the room looks and the lighting and the furniture, like in the Denny's in chapter 1. He really describes everything about the scene before we even meet Mari. And I just think that's really interesting, and I think it's a really good way to really make your reader feel like they're really in the scene. One thing that really kind of interested me throughout this was the way that point of view, kind of the way that he went about point of view in this book. I guess overall you could say that the point of view is more third person omniscient, but there are times when it's in first person or it's in third person objective. I think it's at the beginning of every chapter when we're in a new space. Murakami uses the first person, and he says that we see this and we see that, and we can see Eri lying in her bed in her room, and he uses the we a lot to bring the reader in with him, or with the narrator, I guess. And so that's more of a first person, but then when you get into the conversations with the characters, he's really in third person omniscient, and he really knows what's going on in each of the individual characters' minds as they're talking. Whereas sometimes, I think it was more in Eri's scenes, in her bedroom. Whenever he gets to those scenes, he is in third person objective, and I think that's really interesting. What first made me realize that that's what he was doing was the way that he described it as a camera. He would talk about the camera sees Eri, and the camera zooms into her face, and the camera zooms in on the TV and the man on the TV, and all of that, but we don't know what the characters are thinking or how they're feeling, or anything really about them other than what we can see as the camera. So I just think it's really interesting how he goes back and forth between the point of views like that. It kind of bothered me that we didn't really find out much about Eri. We see what Mari tells Takahashi about Eri, but that's pretty much it. Her scenes in her bedroom, we find out at the end what those were, that she is in this deep sleep that she's been in for 2 months, I think. But we don't, so we know why she's in the initial bedroom, but we don't really get why she is in the TV. I never understood that part. That part never became clear to me. So I'm not really sure if that was just all in her head, if she was dreaming it and that's what we saw, and if so, I guess it makes a little more sense, but I don't like how it ended. I don't like how it just wrapped it up at the end. It didn't really tell us anything about Eri or clarify the scenes inside the TV, in the room in the TV. I also didn't really understand the point of the man that was tied up in the chair that was inside the TV in Eri's room. At one point, kind of earlier on, I thought that it might have been Shirakawa, just because he's the one that beat up the prostitute in the hotel, when they were going through that whole situation and it first showed us Shirakawa, I kind of thought that maybe he was the one tied up in the chair, because I thought maybe the Chinese gang had found him and taken him and tied him up, and I didn't really know how that connected with Eri. But then it kind of just like goes away and we never really find out anything else about him. And once Eri wakes up in the room inside the TV, we never see the man in the chair again. And I guess I just didn't really get what he was there for, what he stood for, or why he was even included in the story, other than to make those scenes a little creepy. Another thing I really didn't understand is the mirror. There was one point where Mari was in a bathroom in a bar, and we are with the narrator as a camera again, and the narrator is explaining the scene through like the camera lens, and he sees Mari standing in front of the mirror, but then when she leaves, the camera goes back towards the mirror and Mari's reflection is still there, and nothing happens. She's just standing there, and that's the end of the chapter. And then it happens again with Shirakawa later on when he is about to leave work. He is standing in front of the mirror, finishes cleaning up and everything, and then he leaves. But then when the camera looks back at the mirror, he's still standing there. The reflection is still standing there. And I guess I didn't really get what that was supposed to mean either, unless it's some sort of like second dimension, and maybe that's where the man that was tied up in the chair was, and maybe that's where Eri went to at one point when she was inside the TV. That's the only connection I could think of between those, but that was never a solid, there was never a solid answer given for that. So I don't know, I guess I just didn't really understand the way it was supposed to all tie together. My overall take on this book, it was honestly amazing. Like I said, I didn't really get some things, or I didn't really catch some things that I probably should have. But other than that, this book was really great. I loved how Murakami kind of kept you guessing. There would be times when I thought I had a theory that was going to be like how the book ended, but then I would realize that I was wrong later on, and then I would form some other theory, and I just really like how he keeps you like on your toes throughout the book. I really like how beautiful and in-depth all of his descriptions are. I know I've already talked about that, but the way that he just describes the scene so vividly and really makes you feel like you're in this place with the characters, and I just think that's really amazing, and he's an amazing author. He's definitely probably on my list of my top authors now, and I will absolutely be reading more of his books.